And for the personal brush, I'm going to go ahead and make a new layer real quick. Go ahead and do the same. It's just so that I can delete it. I am going to use a small, somewhere around 10 brush stroke for this, and the hardness set at 100, so it has a hard edge. And on this new layer, I am going to draw a shape. You can draw any shape you want. I am going to draw the shape of a heart, a not very pretty one at this point in time, but I'm going to take it. I am then going to use my marquee, rectangular marquee, and I am going to make a marquee around it to select it. And again, make sure you are on that layer, okay? I'm then going to go to Edit and Define Brush Preset. And at this point in time, it allows me to name it. So I'm going to name this Heart, and I'm going to click OK. And then I'm actually going to deselect with a Control D and delete that layer. Okay. Now, by default, because I just created this, notice here that it's showing up in my brushes. It's also showing up at the same size that I drew it. So if I want it smaller, I've actually got to come in and reduce the size of it. Okay. And then if I do a single click, notice how it's just making like little instances of it, which is fine. Or if I drew, it's making the shape, but it's making multiple shapes there. Okay. So it's probably something that, well, I'll show you how to change that up in a minute, but with what you know now, you would do single clicks. Now, not only can you make shapes with it, but you can also make text. So I am going to go in and choose a font that I like. You can choose whatever font you like. I don't have a specific one that you need to use. I'm going to make it a font though, and I'm going to make it 20. And notice that it automatically puts that on a layer for me. I'm going to use that marquee tool again to select, edit, define brush preset, and I'm going to put a name to it. There it is. I can deselect and delete that layer. And guess what? Now I can actually brush with my name. That is a brush that is there forever for me to use. Well, forever until I delete it. Okay? So that is how you create a personal brush. Now, let's go down to scattering. This is where we're going to go to brush settings. You can use either one of those new brushes that you just made. Doesn't matter to me which one. And we're going to go to brush settings. Oh, actually, I'm going to skip that one and go down to shape dynamics first, but I'm still going to use the same brush. I'm going to go ahead and use the heart brush settings. So first off, I need to check shape dynamics, and then I need to hover over it, because the hovering over it or the selecting of it makes these options show up. So the size jitter allows me to produce different sizes of that same shape. Okay. So if I bump that up to around 50, you can see the various shapes in there. That is shape dynamics. The minimum diameter, it's just saying what the minimum size is going to be. The angle will allow you to keep them all the same direction or have some rotation. The roundness just kind of rounds the edges of it. I'm going to leave that down. And then the minimum roundness, kind of the same thing there. Okay. Now I want to do one more thing up here in brush tip shape. First off, I'm going to reduce the size of this because remember how I drew it, it was really, really big. So I'm going to make it about 75. And then down here we have spacing. So if you have it all the way to the left, it lines them up one right after the other. But if you move the spacing to the right, notice now how they appear a little overlapped, but not one right on top of the other. So this allows you to create a brush stroke where you can actually see what the shape was that you made. And if that's too small, you can increase your size and maybe give a second brush stroke over top of it with a different color. You could even brush the same shape that you did right there. It's pretty handy. Okay, now we're going to go to scattering, which is here. And the scattering is nice. It adds with the shape dynamics. So keep your shape dynamics the way they are. We're adding scattering. And if you increase your scattering, so initially it's all on one axis. So when you just make your brush stroke, it follows your brush. But if you scatter it, it is going to, and I'm going to do this in a different color again, it is going to move it away from the line, the axis line that you painted on. Okay? Now, you can also change it on both axes. So it can move it every which way. You can also increase the count. Okay, so if yours wasn't doing quite as many hearts or shapes as you wanted, you can increase the count of it a little bit, and you can increase or change the count jitter. So that's sometimes it may be 1, sometimes it may be 10. It kind of depends. That's what the jitter does. It mixes it up for you. Okay? All right. Then let's go to, oh, I just did that in the wrong place. I did that down in color dynamics and I did not mean to. If you did it in color dynamics, you can simply use your marquee, Control X, actually Control C, and then Control V, and use your move tool to move it up to scattering. Okay? Then we can select it again down here, and instead of deleting, we will make a new layer and paint over top of it. That's what I get for trying to hurry. Now, this is something you haven't learned. So if you're having to do this with me too, I am selecting all 3 layers. I click and I shift click to select all 3, and then I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose merge layers. If you didn't mess up like I did, then you don't need to worry about that. Okay, so now I'm going to color dynamics with my brush and checking it and hovering over it. The whole point of color dynamics is that you can choose different colors and it's going to kind of go in between. So for this brush, I'm going to use my my name on this one. So I'm going to choose these 2 colors here. Just make them different, okay? So I want to put my foreground and background jitter, because remember, foreground, background. I'm going to move it up somewhere in the middle, around 50%. Hue is simply a name for color, so I'm going to increase that a little bit. Saturation makes it big and bright. So it is brightness, and then I'm gonna leave purity at 1. Now, before you do something, let me demonstrate real quick. So, oh, I have to go and put all of those back in. Hang on one second to make sure. I forgot that I would have to do that. Scattering. Okay, count. And nope, not texture yet. Color dynamics, there we go. So foreground, background, hue, etc. So if I go in here, notice it's really only doing that one color, my foreground color. So I'm going to Control Z to undo. But if I do it again, notice that it's putting in different colors. And I'm just clicking, okay? Well, there's a way to get around that so that you don't have to click. There, I'll go back there. And that is to check apply per tip. So now, and I'm going to go back, I want to make my name a little bit bigger. Now, if I go, notice that as I brush, it's doing all of the colors that are in there because I did apply per tip. So I didn't let go of it. Okay. And the last thing that we're going to do is we are going to go back to our brushes and choose a hard round brush. And we're going to make it about 200 and something. I'm unchecking all of these except for smoothing, that stays on. And I am going to go up to texture. Now, texture up here has a lot of different textures. It has some photos that it puts in. It has some black and whites that have some interesting things. The thing is you have to be patient and you have to kind of test it out. So if you choose one, look down here. You may have to play with the brightness, the scale, the contrast, and the depth as well. And then let's see, spacing. Spacing does the same thing. And I'm going to also, on the brush tip shape, I'm going to change up the hardness of it. And you can see now along the edges where that's coming in, okay? And again, look how as I play with the scale, you can see what it's doing. It's taking the texture and changing the size of the texture that's in there. The brightness and the contrast, again, you kind of have to play with it because there's not a magic one. So now if I look here at depth, again, after I change the brush tip shape, the hardness, I can go back and look at the depth and you can see that texture there. And so I can go in and I can brush that texture. I can choose a different texture and it's not going to give me the same stuff. So I have to go in and again play with the scale. You can see how the scale is changing now and the brightness. And see this one I have to make the brightness more and the contrast more. And now I can put a different texture on. So that is brush basics. Let's make sure that you get this saved into your OneDrive with your period number, your last name, and then brushes. Save it as a Photoshop file, and then remember to go ahead and change the format right here to a JPEG. Save it as that too.